Welcome to the Endo Kids podcast, the podcast where we help families navigate the ups and downs and in-betweens of growing up healthy. I'm Dr. Mehra, the founder of Endo Kids Concierge and a pediatric endocrinologist, and my co-host is Dr. Waldman, who is also a board-certified pediatric endocrinologist. We are here to break down the science of hormones, share real stories, and answer the questions parents wonder about the most. So whether you're worried about growth, puberty, thyroid, or just want to understand your child's development a little bit better, you're in the right place. We believe every family deserves answers, support, and a caring partner in their health journey. So grab a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and let's tackle this topic together today. Hi, it's Dr. Mehra and Dr. Waldman, and we are back for our next podcast episode for Endo Kids, and we are talking today about what are hormones. So Dr. Waldman, I'll let you start and talk to us about what are hormones? What do you say when people ask you, what are hormones?
Absolutely. It's such a great question. And it's one that I get all the time, whether it's when I'm describing what I do as a pediatric endocrinologist, or like you said, it's the first thing that we talk about when I see a patient in the clinic. And the way that I like to describe hormones are chemical messengers that float around the body that affect absolutely everything that happens. It affects everything from growth to digestion, to the way you sleep, to the way that your body moves. You need hormones for everything. There are many different ones. They come from different organs and they travel all over your body. How do you like to describe them, Dr. Mehra?
I think hormones are just like chemical messengers. And really, the way I describe it to patients sometimes are that they're like the gas pedal of the body. So, they tell your body when to turn on, when to turn off, when to speed up or slow down. And these hormones are just messengers for a lot of things that your body needs to do. A lot of times people think that the heart is like the most important organ in the body or the brain is the most important organ in the body, which it is. But actually, hormones control the brain and they control the heart and they control almost every other organ system in the body. So I think they're one of the most important systems in the body.
Absolutely. And the other way I describe pediatric endocrinology is we deal with patients who have too much hormones or sometimes too little hormones. And that's really what we do. I think the next thing we should talk about is where do these hormones come from? What are some of the organs, the places in the body in which we get these hormones?
Yeah. Where do the hormones come from? The hormones are made all throughout the body, but really it's the endocrine system that takes control of hormone production. When we start talking about hormones, we start from the top down. So let's look at the level of your brain. There's pituitary. So the pituitary sits behind the eye, super small organ, but it's in the brain and it's really the master gland of your body. When we look at hormone conditions in kids or evaluation of hormones, which gland is actually playing a role? So the pituitary is the master gland and it directs growth and tells other glands what to do. And then below that, you have the thyroid. So the thyroid really is the gland sits in the neck. It's a butterfly-shaped organ. And that really gives the body energy. Thyroid hormone if levels are low, it can make kids' growth slow, but it can slow everything down. And if it's too high, the thyroid hormone level's too high, it can actually increase the speed of the heart, increase the speed of your GI system or your gut. Dr. Waldman, do you want to talk about the adrenal glands, which are next?
Absolutely. So the adrenal glands are very small glands that sit on top of the kidneys, and they are super important. They control our stress. They control blood pressure. They control salt water balance. So we really don't think of these things too often, but they are very important. And I think one of the things to note is I mentioned stress. And it's not necessarily the stress that you feel when you're going to take a test or if someone makes you angry. It's really the stress on your body when you get sick. So if you are very sick, it's helping to keep your blood pressure going if you're in the ICU. The next thing we think about is the pancreas, and that is also a really important organ that sits in our belly. and it helps to manage blood sugar and keep that within normal limits. If your pancreas is not working correctly, your blood sugar is also going to be either too high or too low. And one of the last ones that we think about are the ovaries and the testes. Those are important, of course, when we talk about puberty. And in pediatrics, we talk about puberty that happens either too early, sometimes we call it precocious puberty, or too late, and we call that delayed puberty.
Yeah, and it's amazing how many things these organs control. They're very small, but without them, kids can't grow, they can't handle stress, can't even stay alive, actually, and they're affected by a lot of things. So, really, we as pediatric endocrinologists, when we're looking at patients, and when you come into our office, and you're concerned about something for your child, we are thinking about all of these organ systems and how they specifically would affect your child.
Absolutely. Everything is working together and we're looking at the whole body. There's certain specialties that just focus on one thing, looking at your broken arm or looking at one part of the body. But we as endocrinologists are looking from the top to the bottom because everything is working together. These hormones, like we said, interact. And so we're looking from the top down. And I think both of us like to spend time with our patients so that we can focus on everything, looking, seeing if everything is working correctly.
Yeah. Now that we've given you an overview of everything, let's talk a little bit more about hormones, how hormones affect kids in their daily life. Okay. So, parents often don't realize how much hormones influence everyday life, but they affect lots of different things. For example, growth. So, hormones will affect whether a child keeps up with their growth curve. And that's why it's very important to look at the growth chart every time with your pediatrician. We will be talking about growth more in depth on our next episode, but hormones really affect growth. The next thing they affect is energy levels. So kids sometimes are really tired. That can be normal for them. It may be related to their sleep or their diet. But kids who are unusually tired or can't sleep at all without explanation usually need a hormone evaluation. Mood and focus. So there's a lot of questions that I think we should talk about this later, Dr. Waldman, about mood and how hormones affect mood, but they can affect anxiety or attention levels, and that can tie back to hormones. And then finally, pubertal timing. So whether changes come too early or too late, like you said before, or right on schedule, that's also affected by hormones. How do you tell families that hormones are not just about the physical appearance? What do you tell patients about hormones?
Yes, just like you said, hormones affect physically, like we mentioned, but also emotional and mental. And I always like to say that parents know their children best. They know what's normal for them and what is not normal for them. And I really like to listen to parents and understand what they're saying, why something might not be normal for their kids. How are they acting before and how are they acting now? And like you said, mood, attention, energy. All of those things are really hard to measure, right? We don't have a blood test that can measure those symptoms. So, hearing from the families, understanding from our patients what is normal for them, and maybe something has changed and how that is affecting their daily life.
Yeah, when parents come to you and they say, "Oh, eating sugar causes early puberty." Do you think that's a myth? And what do you say to them with regards to that?
Sure. I like to tell them that, yes, that is a myth. Sugar doesn't necessarily cause early puberty or trigger puberty, but certainly it affects our body weight and metabolism. And excess body weight can lead to some problems. And we need to nip that in the bud. Talking about a balanced diet. I am not someone that's going to ever tell you never to have sugar and to cut out all sugar. I believe in a balance. I think that's really important for kids and for families. And so, talking about the balance of food, the balance of nutrients, and how that's going to affect our body, puberty to everything later on in life. So, again, yes, it is a myth. Sugar is not triggering early puberty, but it certainly can affect us in all different ways. What do you tell families when they ask about if kids will always outgrow their growth delays?
So that's a really good one. Parents are going in to get checked by their pediatrician, and their pediatrician will say, hey, they're on the growth chart, they're following their curve. And sometimes that's true. They're following their own curve and they will catch up, but that's not always true. Some kids do grow later. They're late bloomers. They have a family member, usually a dad or a mom, that has gone through puberty late, and that can be perfectly normal. But others have hormone deficiencies. And if we wait too long to evaluate that, the window for treatment sometimes can close. So I think while it is true that some kids grow later, I have seen many patients over the past several years where that actually was not the case. And it's very frustrating as a pediatric endocrinologist and for the families as well when the child is coming in too late and we can't offer any treatment or any help at all to them. The rule I usually have is if you're worried as a parent, get seen early and get evaluated early. But we can tell you as pediatric endocrinologists what you should do and whether your child will be growing on their own, growing later. Make sure you get that evaluation done early. Do hormone problems only show up in teenagers?
That's a great one. Because whenever people hear the word hormones, they think about moody teenagers, right? That's the first thing everyone always thinks about. But no, that is not true. Hormone problems can show up in babies. Both of us have treated babies with hormone issues in the neonatal ICU, all the way to older teenagers and young adults. So, no, hormone problems can show up at any age and they can show up at any time. So, like we had said before, if you're watching your child's growth and all of a sudden something is very different, that is a problem. And you want to talk to either your pediatrician first and possibly see a pediatric endocrinologist. And then what about this one? This might be one of the biggest myths, but let me hear what you have to say about it. It's all in their head. What do you tell families?
Yeah, sometimes it's hard as a parent, and being a parent myself, my kids complain a lot about other things. My kids right now are teenagers. I have a 14-year-old and almost 16-year-old, and they do have mood swings and they're tired and they complain about these things all the time. It's easy to say this is just a phase that they're going through, it's on their head. And sometimes that's true, but there are hormones that play a role in this. So, like you said, Dr. Waldman, if it's very different or changed from before, probably important to get that evaluated. And really, if their fatigue is out of line with what you usually see, or say they're a child and they're in sports and they're drinking a lot of water and going to the bathroom a lot, and you just think they're in sports and they're saying they're thirsty because it's hot outside. Maybe that's the case, but sometimes if it's just out of the norm, it's probably a good idea just to get it checked.
Absolutely. And what are some red flags that parents really should be aware of? Things that should not go unnoticed?
Yeah. So, a child that's growing much slower or much faster than their peers, I think that's a red flag. So, if a child is really not having a growth spurt or on the other hand, is having an early growth spurt, that's a reason to get evaluated. Puberty starting before the age of 8 in girls or 9 in boys, or if it hasn't started by the time they're 14, that's a reason that we need to take a look. Other reasons, unexplained weight gain or weight loss, constant fatigue, headaches, vision changes, thirst and urination, like drinking a lot, peeing a lot, which may mean diabetes, and kids who are unusually anxious or withdrawn, especially when combined with other physical symptoms.
No, I think those are really great things to mention. And just like we said before, parents know best. And if something is off, something is different, something is just not right with your kid, I think that is a red flag. And again, one of the first thing learned when I was becoming a pediatrician and a pediatric endocrinologist is always to trust the parents. They know their kids best and to listen to them because most of the time they are right.
Yeah, and why does timing matter so much, Dr. Waldman?
Is really important because kids are growing, they are developing, things are changing. We want to get in when that window is open. There is only a window of time in where kids are growing. And I have seen too many patients where the window has already closed. And perhaps if we had gotten there earlier, things could have been different. We could have intervened. And so if you are worried, if you notice something is off, Earlier is always better. It doesn't mean that we're going to jump to something like medication or intervention, but we can look at everything. We can look at the information. Perhaps we can get some blood work. Perhaps we can get some imaging, and we can try to answer the questions that you have.
Yeah, and we'd love to feature your questions in future episodes. So if you have questions about growth or puberty or thyroid or diabetes or even weird myths that you've heard, nothing is too small. Send us a message. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok, and we'll link that in the show notes. That's it for today for our EndoKids podcast. Thanks for listening. And remember, understanding hormones is one of the best tools you have to support your child's health and growth. And our next episode will focus on growth concerns in kids.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Endo Kids podcast. We hope you're leaving with a little more knowledge and a lot more confidence. If you have questions, stories, or topics you'd love us to cover, please send them our way. We love hearing from you. And don't forget to check out our website, www.endokidsconcierge.com, for free resources, guides, and more ways to connect. You're not alone on this journey. We're here to support you and your family every step of the way. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an update.